Hello, good morning. Yes, hello. Thanks for coming to the Managing Expectations panel. For the next it's 54 minutes, we're going to have some time to explore what is music management, I guess, and it's all framed under a piece of work that an organisation called the Music Managers Forum has been doing, called Managing Expectations, which is some free publications that explore the experience and frustrations and ambitions of the music management sector. I always find it really handy before a panel when I'm chairing, and I think speakers do, just to work out sort of who's in the room. So I'm really interested to know if there's people who are artists, we got quite a lot of artists here. Great, I assumed it might be that. And are there professional managers or people that want to be managers in the room as well? So yeah, cool, great. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a mix. Who hasn't put their hand up yet, but does, in their role, definitely experience working with managers? Cool. Yeah, so I think every hand's gone up, which has made me happy. Because, management will touch every part of the music industry. I think that there's not a role in music that doesn't have an interaction with management at some point. So it's a very pivotal and key role. So what we're going to do is have a set of panel questions and conversations that I've structured out, and then there will be some time at the end for some Q&A, so you can sort of interact with us. So thanks for coming. I'm going to start by asking all of our panelists to introduce themselves and also let us know why they're a manager. So Rachel.
Hi everyone, my name's Rachel. I work for a management company called Heartstop Music. We are based in Melbourne, Australia, and here in Edinburgh, and we manage the global careers of 5 artists, including Julia Jacqueline, The Weather Station, Marlon Williams, Merck, and Fantastic Furniture. I am actually an employee of the director of the company, which I think is kind of different from the other panelists. So I came into management 5 years ago after working predominantly in a radio and events background. And I came into it because I'm very close friends with one of the artists that we manage. And I think a lot of managers potentially get into it that way because they know an artist really intimately and are deep. They have a deep connection with them because you really have to care to be a manager more than you realize. So I've been working in the industry 5 years. I'm based here in the UK. That's me. Great, thanks. And then Karl, should we?
Hi, my name's Karl Nielson. I'm a board member of the MMF, and that's very important. I feel that that's a background that's really helping managers, kind of come together and raise the standards. I don't know why I became a manager, but I've managed people, artists like Goldie and William Orbit, so working at high extreme levels of success and knowing what that takes, as well as all the way down to managing baby artists and all the rest of it, or setting up labels, and you kind of just fall into a groove of thinking about things and how you want it to be shaped, because otherwise some experience with some other managers can be good or not so good, and you just kind of end up thinking, I want to make a difference, I want to make it better. And we were in the green room earlier on, I was saying to Paul, because it used to be the fact that the manager was the guy who had the van, right? And that's a classic one to start in management. You had the van, that's it. And I was saying, so we had a manager called Gus, and he had a big blue van, but we didn't realise his day job was transporting offal for pet food. Right? So we'd turn up, look great, but we'd smell terrible. And I thought, there's got to be a better way for a manager than just having the van, and I can't drive anyway, so that was it. But yeah, I kind of fell into it in very different ways, and I love it. I really, really enjoy it, because I feel passionate about music the first day I, discovered what it was all about.
And what's your structure nowadays?
Structure is just me and the artist that I manage, and we take it on, perhaps in different stages. Some you just, right, okay, we need intervention straight away, let's get working, let's build this, and let's put a piece of paper between us. Sort of initially, it's to kind of try and see, you always work with somebody for a couple of months, and then you go again, and then go again, and go again, before you formalise a certain relationship with the artist. But it's just me and the artists, and when we need other bits, we bolt people on because there's a lot of expertise now in the business that you weren't able to tap into, but because of people have set up on their own and music consultants and whatnots, and you can draw up a lot of knowledge now that you weren't able to before because they were tied up working for a label or something like that. So now you've got access to help us run better businesses.
Thanks. And Shikayla?
Hi guys, I'm Shikayla. I have my own company as well. It's called S&M Management, and I manage 4 artists: Rebecca Garton, Lavelle London, Kadeem, Tyrell, and Kadiata. And why am I a manager? I ask myself every day. Because I love music, I love the passion I love my artists, and I just love being part of the MMF. I was not joking. So I'm also part of the MMF. I was on the 2021 Accelerator. I got into management through, I left college and I was working at Selfridges, and there was a girl that said to me, I'm a rapper, and I need someone to help me organize a photo shoot. So I was like, okay, I'll be your assistant. How about that? Helped her, and her music was literally the worst music I've ever heard in my life. Honestly, still to this day, it's still the worst. Imagine 7 years in, it's still the worst music I've ever heard in my life. But there was a gentleman that I met, and he was like, if you're going to work for her, why don't you come and work for me? And so he poached me, and he was actually the European manager of a rapper called Waka Flocka. And then I spent my summer at Reading and Leeds Festival, Wireless, and I was only 20. And I thought, this is the best thing ever. And once that summer was over, he moved to LA and signed another artist called Janae Aiko, and I was left in the lurch. So I went to university because I was trying to apply for all of these jobs in the music industry at Universal, Sony, and I got rejected from every single role, obviously. And everyone was like, no, you don't have enough experience. So I went to university and I studied music management and brand marketing at Bucks. And at the time, I didn't even know that universities had those kind of degrees, because when you're in school, they tell you that you can do things like psychology and law and be a doctor and do maths. And there's not really anyone that pushes creative degrees. So when I found that, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Then I went in as an intern and an assistant, and then I was really, really organized. And one of the guys that was a writer was like, I want to become an artist again. I want you to manage me because you're really organized. And I used to be in a group called Rough Squad, which was Tinchy Strider's group. So I'll bring you in to all these events, all these grime events, and then you can help organize my life. So we had a swap. So I was the person that was being really, really organized, and he was helping me get introduced and build my network around the music industry. And then from there, I was like, okay, I love this. And I decided to start managing him. And yeah, that's how I got into management.
Great story, and great resilience of keeping going and finding your way. Because now you are one of the managers that's been through the MMF's Accelerator program. And I thought it might be handy to rewind a little bit and explain what the MMF is, because we're a membership organisation, a collective body really that works with people like these three, either side of me now. And we focus on sort of advocacy and giving a collective voice for the people that are music managers and the artists that they represent. But we also do professional development and trying to make the managers the very best. And I think what we've just heard from the 3 different experiences here is that they're all working in very small operations. And that, I think, really, I'm going to move on to sort of what the key skills of management are, but I think that the key skills are really entrepreneurialism and resilience to just keep going. So, Rachel, what's your sort of key skills that you feel that you have, or which you would look for in colleagues?
I think management is so fundamentally about trust. It's about you are there to represent the artist in every facet. And like you mentioned at the top of this panel, Paul, you know, like managers touch, you know, they connect with every part of the music industry, whether it's label, whether it's publishers, whether it's promoters, whether it's agents, whether it's publicists, you know, like it goes through management. We are the middleman, and we're there not as a gatekeeper. It shouldn't be perceived that way, or as someone who's sort of dictating to the artist what's happening, but it's taking in all that info, sorting it out, presenting it to the artist, and giving them really sound advice about what they should do, and giving them autonomy and agency to make decisions so that they can, you know, not get overwhelmed and focus on what they're supposed to be doing, which is the creative element, right? So trust, I think, is one of the biggest skills I have with my artists. I pretend to be them on Instagram, on Airbnb, on, you know, like I have all their information. I could steal their identities if I wanted to, but I don't. Not yet. So I think trust is like a fundamental skill. Organization, totally key, because that's not something, some artists have it in abundance. If you find that we're amazing unicorn artist that can do it all, but a lot of people don't. Creative sensibilities and personalities kind of mean that organization is tricky. So having that and being able to present things in a way that is super clear for your artist and helps them, you know, make sense of things is a really, really key skill. And I think diplomacy as well, being good with people, because you are representing the artist. So if you're really shitty to an agent, that's going to impact your artist. It's going to reflect back on them. I want everyone I meet to think, oh, Julia Jacqueline's people were great, loved dealing with them, so wonderful. Like I'm there to represent the artist. So I think diplomacy, people skills, being a good egg is another one. So yeah, I mean, I could go on, but those are my sort of 3 big ones, I think.
Great, thank you. Shikayla?
I think you mentioned it, Paul, having that resilience. I think that is a skill, not giving up when things get hard, because it does get hard. Do you know what, you've mentioned everything, actually. You're right. No, it's like, being confident, that's being confident in yourself and being confident in your artists and where they can go. Because with that confidence, you're able to meet new people, speak to new people, build your network, but you're not afraid to approach and go for new opportunities for your artists. So I think you really, really have to be confident in both yourself and your artist. I think you have to be really, really strong. And that's in your mind, you have to set your goals and make sure that you always try to at least reach them. You'll get a lot of no's in music, so be prepared to get no's and keep on going. Walk through those no's and kick doors down, and you know. But yeah, I think you have to. The last thing I would say is have a balance between business and creative. So you have to be that one that's very, very organized, but you also have to be able to feed into your artists where they may not be able to get that kind of creative juices flowing. You can also be the person that can feed into them and give them ideas as well. So just definitely have a balance between being an entrepreneur and being that business side, but also that creative side, so that you're able to support them in the right way. And it doesn't just seem like you're there just for the money.
Yeah.
The money's really important, though, because that's what you're running. You're running a business. You're not running it at a loss. You're trying to run a business. And I think that's a really key thing. Also, remain on top of your knowledge. So make sure you're always reading, always learning, always bringing something, because it's tough out there, and the game changes, and it changes quickly. And so be curious, look at what other people are doing in other markets in different ways. One size doesn't fit all. I mean, what I do with one artist, I can't do with the other. And it doesn't apply. This bit that I did over here got great success. I can't just do, as save as and do it over it. It doesn't work like that, because you're dealing with people who are, they're intensely creative. They're very, they can be difficult people sometimes, at the best of times to deal with.
And can we? What do you think you need artists to be to work with? What makes good artists?
A good artist have that just singular vision that they're really correct in what they're doing. They're not even confident. That's just not even their thing. It's just like, that's it. There's just one thing on their mind and they're going to make that. And being able to get what's in the head of the creative artist and coming out of speakers, that's the skill in itself, do you know what I mean? To be able to get from that to that. And what role do you play in that part? And then how can you help facilitate that? And I find that managing some of the bigger artists like Goldie and William, there's such a, you're selling lots of records, you're in loads of meetings, you're doing all this, and they can become quite vulnerable. And what you end up doing is not actually managing the artist, you're actually managing all the relationships around them so they can get on and do what they need to do, because they really need to live in a bubble. Because it's not being a gatekeeper, but it is actually allowing them a space to become who they are as an artist, creative. Whereas some of the newer artists I'm bringing up, they kind of need more intervention into this and into this and into this, and they're learning their skills along the way. Do we need a choreographer? Do we need this? Do we need this? Do we need that? Very different. So bigger artists, very much a different set of management skills. Sometimes it's like I became a better manager after I had children, right? Because it's just like having children. And they do throw wobblers, and you do get the crazy 3 o'clock in the morning phone call, and just like changing the baby at bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's very much that same process, and that kind of you just want to keep nurturing their talent.
I'd like to expand a little bit on that sort of how you nurture the talent and the A&R role of music managers, because I think that really comes across in the work we've done with managing expectations. And I think it's not observed enough in the industry how essential the sort of A&R role is. And I think that, people assume that was what a record label would do, and the artist just wrote some songs and the manager would go and get a record deal or something like that. So I know Rachel and I touched on this yesterday. What's your experience of the creative side of management?
I think, it was interesting what Shikayla was just saying about having that balance, because sometimes you can, as a manager, just be so deep in a label deal or a US visa application, or, it's admin heavy. And then that afternoon, you can be having a really intense conversation with your artist about a creative direction or a sound or a demo that you didn't expect. And actually, there's a certain element of not pushing, but great example with an artist that I worked with, Weather Station, she's just had a massive year with it. She was self-managed for 4 albums before she came on to our roster and got managed by us, which is very different from all the other acts on our roster who we've managed from inception, like before they even released anything. So she had all of this, she'd done it herself. She was super self-sufficient. She's super capable in a business sense. But she just never had got to that next step, never sort of transitioned to that next level. And I think a lot of the work that we did that was successful was kind of pushing ideas like different producers. Maybe you work with someone who's going to bring a different element and takes you slightly out of this folk genre that you are wonderful at, but think about different ways in which you could express yourself or make your music. And so not being pushy, but pushing artists out of their comfort zone. I think that's like a key part of it, and always trying to get them to excel. And I think that's the sort of A&R part. And then when you're in an environment where you're pitching records and you're going to labels, is that you, again, Shikayla mentioned it, confidence about backing it and saying this is a new direction for the artist, but we totally believe in it, and this is going to really blow things wide open. And there was a lot of nervousness around Ignorance, the record that she released, because it was a departure, but luckily it totally worked. People loved it, and they were really excited by this new sound. So does that kind of speak to what you mean?
That's it, really. It's like always listening to the artist. That's a key thing. Sometimes you can discard some information, but always listen to them. It's really important when they send you music, for example. listen to it straight away, get back to them with valid points about X, Y, Z, and don't sugarcoat it, but really provide something. But always get back to them straight away, because there's nothing more frustrating. You didn't listen to it, who do you think you are? Do you know? And that's a real important job. But also to listen to what they're saying about where they want their careers to be developed, what they're doing. You might say to them, well, what about if we support it by doing some live? And they say, no, I don't really want to do that. And you say, okay, well, that's a thing. So then, having taken that on board, don't then set them up with an agent and start having conversations because you think it's a great idea. They've just said, no, I don't want to do that. So take that on board and don't push them into areas where they don't want to go, but open them up to possibilities. That's all I'm saying. But don't ever not listen to them, because they generally inherently kind of correct, really, and it is their art. And so that's an important thing.
Shikayla, how do you sort of navigate this? Because you've got sort of developing independent artists on the predominant roster, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, so like you said, when the music comes through, it's kind of like giving honest and open feedback. I think most of my artists write their own music. 2 of them produce their own music. So sometimes you'll just be getting a new song every day because they've just been in that mood, and not all of it is the best, but they think that every single song, I promise you, artists, they think every song is their next single. And it's like, no, well, actually, I don't think that is that strong. Like, I prefer this one, and I think this one works better around this time. And it's kind of being able to, like, be part of the process, not beat your artist down into, like, to the point where they just don't have any confidence, but understanding that certain things will work better for this time, or certain things will work better maybe with a feature or something, like having that ear to also input as like you said, like an A&R, or actually this sounds like it could do with a couple of keys on it or some more drums, or because I think most of us we work with our artists because we're also fans of them, you know? Like you can't work with an artist that you don't like their music. So when you're working with that artist, if you were to buy it, you'd know what you want to hear. So that's why you're able to be part of that creative process.
And that can sorry to interrupt you, that can also be tricky, because if you are a fan, like I find myself, you know, like, because I am a fangirl at heart. I think you have to be, like, and then I'm like, this is great. And then I'm like, is it great? Have I just lost? And so then having your network, having peers, having people you trust, that the artist, that you clear with the artist, like get consent, but like that you can send to and be like, what do you think? Like get feedback from multiple people, because, you know, that's only going to serve the artist better, and not be so precious about, you know, be respectful and careful with their work, but don't be afraid to kind of get other opinions on how it sounds.
Yeah, what I was going to say, like, at what point do you think it is time to go to other partners, investors, labels, and do that? How do you, as managers, feel? Right, I'm ready to take that to get investment. What's your gut there?
I think for me, when it's like, okay, you're starting to get, like, you've got audience, you've got people that are backing you, you've got like a fan base. I think it's the more you have to show now, the more you have to show to labels, it is the easier, because now they kind of look at your numbers, they look at your sales, they look at those kind of things, and that's what they want to invest in. But some of my artists don't even want to be signed. They're like, no, I'd rather stay independent. Like, I wouldn't mind a publishing deal, but I don't want a record deal. I want to keep my masters, or I don't mind like getting a distribution deal. I want to keep my publishing though. And there are some distribution services that offer like a small amount of money, but because they're able to produce and like they have home studios and stuff like that, they don't need as much money. They just need like a little team behind them to maybe do radio plugin, to do PR, or to shoot some videos. So they're happy with what they're doing. I'm
going to do a quick little plug for a resource that we've got at the MMF, which is a free downloadable document that's called the Deals Guide. And it's also got a deals calculator attached to it, so you can sort of plug in what the different options are and work out because I think we've identified 10 different release options, and I think managers and artists can really work out the sort of menu of what they want their career to look like with the music.
That's really funny, actually, because when people always say, you know, go to the artist and you walk in there and you've got your lawyer on one side with you, and I always thought, this makes no sense to have the lawyer. I'm running up a bill, it's going to cost me money, talking about money. Why don't I bring in my accountant to the deal? So we brought in an accountant, and I said to him, right, what they're saying, is it true? Do the thing. Worked out what they just told to us, we were going to be like 20p off worse every record. And I went, how dare you? How dare you mug me off right there, right now? And I said, that is incorrect, unprofessional, you know, because I had my accountant in the room. And that made way more sense. I said, what does that mean? When did I get that? When did we get the return? What's that? And it was bingo, bango, and we could make the decision there and then. And we managed to come out of that deal with the deal that we really wanted to have, because I took my accountant in, not my lawyer.
I think that's a big, like, identifying as an artist, for the artists in the room and for the managers in the room, like identifying what it is that your artist wants to achieve. Always try and like start with that bigger picture and then working from there. Like, in that case, what does the team need to look like? Does it need to look like full range? Are we working with label? Are we doing it all? Or like you said, like if artists want to remain independent or they're not comfortable doing some things, paring down and only having certain people on board, you don't need like everyone to make it work. And good managers can upskill in areas so that you can kind of bridge those gaps so the artist isn't having to fork out, you know, a lot of money to pay for services they don't need.
Yeah, I said in the previous one, sometimes when we don't have any money for some artists, I'll write their press releases and I'll do their radio plug-in. I think as a manager, you have to have those relationships anyway with radio DJs, with producers. And you know, the more events you go to, or the more kind of radio shows you're doing anyway, you build those relationships. So actually, sometimes, even if they do have a plugger or they do have someone that does their PR, you just kind of like making sure that they've definitely received it, or you have that relationship with someone at a DSP to kind of just give them that extra push helps anyway. So, and
having those skills at the start when you're working with developing artists means that when you get to like where like some of the artists that we work at this slightly bigger level, you can go to a publicist and be like, have you spoken to like 13 Ver in Amsterdam? Have we had a Radio 1 play? You know the stations, you know where you should be hitting in territories. And so you've got those skills to then like push back and be like, are you doing the work? Not to be, you know, mean about it.
I think for any one artist, I must have about 30 separate folders, whether it be for artwork, photography, PR, accountants, agents, live, you know, blah, 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 blah. And they're all there in it, because I've got to go to that at a moment, you know, biog and photos right there, because people want it at heartbeats notice. And so you just build up this portfolio of stuff for you to help manage what they need in a very fluid, efficient way, rather than having to do it from scratch again. If you've got it all there, all in the templates, boom, you know, how many times do they want things like height, feet, measurements, passport information, all the rest of it? So I always do an ID on the artist that has everything. And we talk about stealing identities. I mean, I've got everything on that thing. It's got the bank account, it's got their national insurance, it's got their passport details, it's got its date of birth, but it's got everything that I need to know in a heartbeat. I can make that decision there and then. It's a lot of responsibility, you know, because it falls into the wrong hand. I mean, that's just a simple hack, isn't it? It's like, oh dear, busted. But if you don't have the info, you can't act. You know, the amount of times you do it, you're in America, you need to sign a form, you need this number, that number, that number, this number. Numbers, CAEs, PPLIDs.
I mean, I think managers are superheroes. And I've kind of got a question. You know, there are so many artists, and it's easy to make music now. Not necessarily make it really good, but it's easier to make music than it's, you know, recorded music than it's ever been before, and release it. Why the MMF's membership has grown enormously over the past couple of years. We're about 1,200 members now. But why do you think there's so few people that are actually getting into management compared to artists? How could that improve? You know, what can we do to strengthen the management sector, do we think?
I think that people have a fear of not knowing. We're in an industry that's always changing, and they don't realise that we don't really know what's in. I'm joking. We don't, like, it's hard to say as a manager, this is what you do, because it varies between everyone. So, and like I said earlier, when I went to uni, I was lucky because I only found out through like a family member that these things were available. But there's not that many. People only see the artist. They don't see the work that a manager does. And so I think people are would rather be part of the entourage than be part of the team. And I think there needs to be more things like this that there just needs to be maybe more things online, or just things that people can listen to and understand what you do as a manager, and like the ups of being a manager and the successes of being a manager and the highs of being a manager. Not always like, oh, this person had a dodgy manager and now they owe them like £7,000 million, and then they got them into this really, because that's all what you hear. You hear a lot of like horror stories. So
I think the horror stories did put a lot of people off. Management was a very dirty word, if you look at, I mean, it's bizarre that we're in an industry where why our 20% has become the rule of thumb.
Can
Why?
we just explain the 20%?
20% was for the Beatles.
So
it was invented by Brian Epstein from the Beatles. He was the fifth Beatle. They split it 100% 5 ways. He was the fifth member, effectively, 20% for doing the management. Mm-hmm. And we're still running that same model 50, 60 years later. Is it right? Don't know. Is there anything better? There are different ways of doing things. I mean, I've got one artist, she wants me to do as a pay-as-you-go. She wants to pay me and I went, how do I feel about that? Because I said to her, I don't think you can afford me as a pay-as-you-go. And I started to have to work out, what my daily rate should be. And it's like, God, I'm quite expensive. And but I thought, but I really do like the music. So I said, I'll cut you a deal. We'll do it on this, that, and it's prorated against a little bit of percentage as well. So, yeah, but the 20% thing is the most bizarre thing because of the Beatles. They were that influential. They even still following the same business model they were doing 50, 60 years ago.
And it is changing a lot, these different models and relationships that artists and managers are building. I think through our managing expectations work, we've identified that managers are often the first investor. They're investing relatively small amounts in the grand scheme of things, but they are the first investor. I can't remember the exact percentage it is in our free publications, but they're invested in that sort of $5,000 to get things going, setting up the initial brand, the identity, the first recordings perhaps. And managers are carving out just different relationships of how they might do it. To work for them, I think, because having a business model that's just 20% of net profit might not work if you've got all these, so you've got to, I think artists and managers have got to work out the way in which it works for them. And we've really discovered in the past few years with the accelerator that there are different models, there's different income streams. Not every career is going to look the same. And the industry is very good at telling sort of singular narratives, I think, about what success looks like. But success can look so differently. Like, we've got managers on the accelerator that do incredibly well, but you wouldn't know the artists. Yeah.
No, totally. That's very true, I think. And just for people wanting to be managers, it is a largely thankless task. Be prepared for that. Be prepared for no one to know what you do, not getting a lot of credit, and you've just got to you got to make your peace with that. If you have good relationships with your artists, then you will have gratitude there, but you're the last in the pecking order to get credit for any of the work that gets done. And I don't think that's unrealistic, I think, and not to be sort of maudlin about it. There are great things about being a manager, but it is such a hidden role, and I think, going back to this commission basis, this 20%, it can be done so many different ways, especially when you're starting out. I mean, my boss who I work for has been a manager for 12 years now, but when he started with Marlon, who we manage, you know, he was just like, I love your music, I'm really hungry to learn. He had a legal background, and he was like, I'll take a 2% commission and while we start for the first year, and then it went to 5, and then it went to 10, and they grew together, and he learned alongside. And for Marlon, that really worked on a financial basis, because he was like, well, I don't know anyone else who's going to do this with me, and I trust you, and so let's just roll on. And that worked out. And now, you know, Al's seeing real gains from having the commission structure that he does with Marlon. But it was a long slog for a while, and this, you know, personal investment is absolutely, it's not to say that every manager has to go in with a spare 10 grand to put into their artists, but, you know, you do have to be prepared to invest yourself. Sorry, I don't think I answered your question.
I think that's important, because if you are investing, then it does become your business as well. Yeah. And so that's very fundamental, that it is a business. You've invested into it and you want to see a return, whether that be 20%, whether we're cutting a different deal or whatever. I mean, you know, in the 80s and 90s, there was a very big push on. A friend of mine had a production management deal. So he'd own the publishing and the masters, and then he'd share in each part of everything at a very early stage, and never lost the use of his masters. So it was kind of a different way of doing it, and I've always sort of thought of going back to that. But do make sure you're invested, otherwise you don't then have any sense of ownership for yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, nah, it's okay. I'm just taking the 20% where I can make it. You know, yes, you've got all the costs, but really get invested, because your mindset does change as an artist manager, and when you're truly invested in it, you know, and you do it as a loan, you know, that sometimes you never get back. No, you do get it back.
Eventually.
It can be a loan or an investment, or, you know, it's different ways. But I think if you're looking at putting your own money in, it is a different relationship that you need to consider to the 20% model that was talked about. Shikayla?
Yeah, I know some people, I don't personally, but I know some people that put their money in and negotiate at 50% until they get that money back, and then reduce it to 20. So there's loads of different ways that you can do it. I think it just depends on how much money you have as a manager to invest, and how much your artist is willing to kind of negotiate and split with you as well. So there's all different ways to, you know, make it work, I guess.
And it is just really hard to quantify what we do. Like, I can't even imagine putting together a day rate, work like 17 hours a day, like it's nuts. So you can't, but you have to obviously draw lines and boundaries as a manager, right? Because you can't expect an artist to pay for that. There's a certain amount of graft, especially in those early periods. And then there's a tipping point. And then you get into where you are with Goldie and William, where it's just like, you know, it's well worth it.
We're talking about managing expectations. You have to manage your expectation for yourself as well, which is really important. It's like, hold on a second, why am I doing this, actually? And we end up spending an awful lot of time just nurturing and pandering our artists, and not actually looking after ourselves. And that's really important, because if you look after yourself, you get able to be in a much better position. And it took me a while to get that bit right. Do you know what I mean? Not being like barking every time, you know, they bark and you run and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you want a little bit of an even balance, you know. And you'll still get the 3 o'clock in the morning crazy phone calls. So, you know, what can you say?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot right now about boundaries and mental health and well-being. And how much do you think the manager identifies as a freelancer, or in the mindset with other freelancers? Or do managers focus too much on what the industry is doing, the music industry, rather than the sort of growth of small businesses or freelancers' sort of rights? Because I find that sometimes it's a bit overshadowed because of the music industry narrative, and so you are the small dog rather than the big sort of what else is going on in the small business environment, and how can I develop myself as a small business owner? Any views on that?
Don't really thought about that, but I think that's why this MMF thing is so good, because when you're managing artists, when you're starting out on that journey, it is only ever your problem, and you think you're the only person that's ever had that problem or that issue or whatever, and you don't know to really speak to other managers wasn't really a big thing, and you weren't sharing all the knowledge. And I think the MMF as an umbrella has really brought that together, and then we all realise, sitting around the room, we're thinking we have all got sometimes the same problem with the same labels. And it's like, oh my days, it's like, so we've got to change this for ourselves or ask for things in a better way or just improve the terms and the conditions of the way we do business. And I think that's been instrumental with the work that the MMF has been doing with dissecting the digital dollar and asking for better rates on the new royalty payment platform that we discussed.
And Shikayla, you've been part of our sort of flagship, I guess, example of how we work with managers, the Accelerator program, which is supported by YouTube Music, and an open application for people to join a cohort. Did you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of learning and developing yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, the Accelerator was huge to my development as a business and just as a manager. It kind of gave us like a small little forum to kind of speak about, where we want to go as managers and the issues that we've faced, and then also been able to kind of feed into each other's different ideas. I'm still in contact with most of the people that were on my cohort, and even just running new ideas by them. And I think as well, as managers, we're so focused on building our artists' brands that we forget that actually we are a brand. We have to build a brand for ourselves because we're the people that are representing that artist, and we're the ones that are kind of putting ourselves in front of the wider industry. So I think it's really, really important that, you have people that can kind of help you with your conduct within the industry and help you if you're struggling or you don't know the best way to approach different people. So
as part of that program, you develop a business plan. Did you have one before you applied?
I didn't have a business plan before I applied, and I made the business plan because I wanted to be part of it. If I'm being honest, I was like, what do I need a business plan for? I'm doing it already. It was not even planned in the first place. I'm just here. But what I found with the business plan was that I had set goals for myself, and I had to kind of identify, things that may stop me. And we had a task to kind of go back, because I'll be honest, you make the business plan because you have to, but it's not something that you always look back at. But when you did go back, I realized actually the goals that I have set for myself, I managed to reach most of them. So I would actually advise everyone, if you haven't already, at least do a small business plan, or at minimum set some goals for yourself every year and see if you can build yourself to the next level, because it really, really does help.
And I think leaning on other managers is key. There are big management companies out there for really large artists like Crush and they then have, colleagues, but we don't really have colleagues. My only colleague is in Melbourne, he's always asleep. And so you don't have people you can talk to and bounce off, and you're just on your own and you're grinding away and you're grafting and you're working so hard on the artist that you don't have people to kind of bounce off. And this is why the MMF is so good, why this is so good. Having there's this notion of intellectual property and being a little bit this is mine and I don't want to let my strategy or have my strategy out there or share anything, this network or this content that I have. But actually within our industry, I think it's very chill and very community, and it's really important to lean on other people who do the work that you do.
The labels hate the MMF, really. Because it's we're sharing knowledge that they don't want us to share. They've managed to keep us pretty isolated. So, but it's it's not. It's better for us, better for our artists. Labels, it was oh no, that's not good.
I've realised that actually through the Accelerator, I can just pick up the phone and just be do you know what? I feel like I'm just on I'm not in the mood at the moment. Can you give me some inspiration? And I found the MMF Accelerator, especially because we have a group chat, we have conversations outside, just great, because you have that person that might be doing loads and they're no, trust me, look, this is what we can do. And I think because we kind of see each other as a family and we know we're all kind of aiming for the same thing, Like, we're not scared to share those contacts, or we're not scared to share that information. And anything that anyone else gets, they don't mind sharing it, like little industry knowledge that, you know, they don't want managers to really know. So.
I think the strength is as well is that you're very different. You know, you work in different genres with different businesses. You're not direct competitors all the time. We need to sort of start wrapping up to allow some time for a couple of questions, but I would like some sort of concluding thoughts from you about sort of what would be the key change that you would like to see in the music industry from a manager's perspective, or kind of like, you know, what would your ideal scenario deals look like, so that there's a bit of a wrap up for everyone. Karl.
Oh, it's a tough one. I'd like us to get, it's all about payment, isn't it? So you do a gig, you get paid. You sell a record, you get paid 6 months later. What's that about? It's just not right. It's just not right, the way that royalties are held. And they've come up with excuse after excuse after excuse. I had a little label, and we were distributing an awful lot of, you know, dance music. And iTunes were paying us every 30 days. So the artists that were signed to our labels also were getting paid on 30 days. What's wrong with that, you know? But all of us as a streaming model, they're making an excuse to hold money for an inordinate amount for infinite years. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like it just in today's day and age, it's just not on. You know, it's just wrong. So I'd like to see that sped up, you know, and that friction between all these streaming royalties and, you know, and I still come back to this one, in a business where it's your goods, it's your commodity, yet the label can't tell you how much they're selling it for and how much you're going to get, because they're not allowed to say so. They're under their NDA. How can they tell us? It's, you know, you don't go to a farmer and say, oh, much, you know, he's like, oh no, I'm not telling you how much I'm going to sell it to you for.
An awful farm.
You know, an awful farm, yeah. So you know, it's bonkers. The notion of that is just crazy, and
it's all about
is
royalties,
wrong.
payments.
It is wrong, and it should not be dressed up as anything other than wrong.
Chris Cook's doing a little talk about song royalties later, so you can hear a little bit more on that. Shikayla, sort of some wrapping.
A change. Okay, so I'd say for new managers that are just starting off, one thing that I found is I was trying to get into the music industry while still managing, and people in the industry were like, how are you going to do both? Like, as Paul said, we are superheroes. We know how to juggle. So I wish people understood that as a new manager that's managing a small act, we still need to earn money, and the acts that we start off with don't really get that much money. So, like, give us a chance, guys. Do you know what I mean? We can do both. We're able to juggle multiple tasks at a time. So we can definitely juggle a 9 to 5 if we needed to. So
I think that's one of the things I really noticed with Accelerator is people almost like they're actually doing quite well, but they are doing other jobs.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they're not identifying as managers yet. And I think that if more people were doing it as a little extra income, and started to build that up as like a band develops, you know, if you've got that initial passion, just keep it going as a thing, and it will turn into a job rather than it just immediately becoming a job. Exactly. That growth that you've talked about is possible.
Yeah, I always find in music industry you'll have like people that are A&Rs and events managers, and that's fine. Or you have someone that can be like an artist, or I don't know. They have two roles within the music, but it's never, you don't get that many managers that can be, and I guess it's because they don't want to share the inside, the inside industry. I
think sometimes it's a conflict of interest, right? Yeah. Like you have these labels who also have management wings, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Like that's how can you as the manager negotiate the best deal for your artist if you're in cahoots, not cahoots, but if if it's a partnership with the label. I find like those sorts of things a bit tricky, and not to be like it's about what would I change the money, but because our rosters, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the funding available to those artists from those countries is astounding. Not to make you weep, but there is a fund in Canada called Star Maker, where if you sell over 500 CD, cassette, LP, doesn't matter, 500 units, you get $500,000 for your career that you can draw down at any time for touring, international marketing, any time, and you will not get rejected for that. The UK is criminally underfunded. Arts are criminally underfunded. We know this across the whole art spectrum, but I do think emerging artists and like talking about, yeah, as a manager, get ready to invest. It's like, you might not have I don't, geez, like you might not have that money. So I think if I could see a change, it would be better funding for artists.
Yeah, funding is actually the fundamental. In Canada, it's been transformative. I mean, there's no excuse why Drake and all those, they've got the biggest artists in the world right now, and it's been funded.
We're going to go to some questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Because so I wanted to sort of just engage our audience. So has anyone got a question? Yes, there's a roving mic coming, but shout if you're loud enough. Come on, you can do it.
Hello. Sort of as an artist, looking for management or between management, you're sort of told half the time you should be out speaking to people all the time, saying you're looking for it, contacts all the time, and the other half of the time you're told that you should be focusing on yourself and let people come to you so that they're invested and they're interested in that sort of thing. Just wanted to hear your thoughts about what you thought.
I think it's a balance. I definitely think that you should go out there just to build your network, full stop. Because as you build your network, you're going to get yourself out there as an artist and people will be interested in you. I think it's really difficult for people to just approach. Like, I get approached like, oh, hi, Shikayla, I noticed that you're a manager and I'm looking for someone. And I'm like, I know you haven't listened to my artist because you're folk and all of my artists are like RM. So I think don't just look for a manager, like look for someone that's interested in you. And that's why people kind of say focus on yourself, because once you're building and you start to get recognition, then you'll have people that want to be involved with your journey. And that way you'll find a better manager because they believe in you and they're not just there for money. I know money is really important, but you don't want someone to just be like, oh yeah, I can see that you're going to make me a lot of money and I don't really care about you and I don't really care about your music,
I don't think I've ever gone to showcases with the think of, I might discover new talent. That's never, in my experience, never happened to me. It's happened the other way around, where the artist generally finds you. And that, I've always found that's really, somehow it ends up in your inbox. You reject it or not, but just that happens to me, and they go, okay, this is just a little bit better than what I've been listening to. And so they've generally found me, not the other way around.
I think, sorry.
Should we go to the next question, just in time?
How do you find that management?
Who
do I reach out to?
That's what I was just about to say. Like, it's really hard. People are like, how do you know? Because we're often hidden, right? But I think a good place to start is looking at artists you love and then going through. Most artists should have, like, either on their, like, a website, or maybe there's a link in bio in their Instagram. You can often find teams. You can often find, if you can't find a manager there, you might find the booking agent. Booking agents are often there because they want to be contacted. No harm in reaching out to the booking agent and saying, I'd really love to be connected to this artist's manager. I'm really a huge fan of the campaign they've done. And going about it that way, just be a bit of a sleuth, be a bit of a detective, or find the label and reach out that way. You can often, you have these horrible Google directories where it's behind a paywall and things like that. But if you just dig in a little bit, you can often find a contact, and going through them to find a manager, that's often a good way of doing it.
I'd also suggest look around you for the person that's got the skills that the people have talked about. So many people get into management because of the close relationship they've got with an artist. And there's not a huge number of managers compared to artists. And managers can grow really successfully with the artist. So, I think that there is that as well. The manager is the person around you that's putting on the gig, perhaps, that's showing that passion. I got into management by doing a record label, a music festival. I was a radio plugger. I did a bit of music journalism. I did all these things. And then an artist came along and was like, oh, can you be my manager? And I was like, oh, what does that mean? And they were like, well, you're doing all these things. And I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I'm probably managing. Yeah, that makes sense. And they were ready to go to market and for it to become a full-time profession for me. Yeah. But it was them identifying that I was probably a manager first, yeah? So look around at the other people that are supporting your career and show an interest.
Yeah,
My mum's so busy though.
Well, no, some mums make amazing managers. Yeah.
I know, she would.
Do you have any close friends that love your music and are very, very organised and quite...
Yeah, but I do have those people in my life, but like we're starting other things. Like I've started a charity with them, so we're so invested in the things we're doing. But I want to focus it on the music. I don't want to take away from their stuff.
So
everyone's a creative.
It sounds like a one-to-one conversation will probably happen after that. Anyone else got any other question? I think we've got a moment, or we're on 12 now. But no one's telling us to stop, are they? No? Great. We've got time for your question.
Okay. When an artist is looking for management, what are the green flags and red flags to look out for? Like, how can you tell who's a snake and who's not?
Mate, if you invent that process, I'll come and shake your hand, because you probably...
I think, like, when you have that first, if you manage to reach out to a manager and it's not what we were just talking about a close person that you can kind of elevate together, and they can start managing you. But if you're working with an established manager, I think it's really key in those first few meetings to get a sense of, are they telling you what to do, or are they asking you what you want? Like, if a manager sits down and goes, what do you want? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? What do you want? Like, if they give a shit like that, then you can kind of tell that they're not in it to see what your streams are like and what commission they could probably take. So they should be serving you from the get-go. So it's about those, like, when you have those meetings, hearing what and are they asking you lots of good questions? Are they listening to you? That seems like pretty basic stuff in terms of like interacting with a person. But I do think
it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
And also as a manager, I'm not scared to sack an artist. I was like, mate, you didn't cut the mustard. Where are we going with this? This is so. It has to be a two-way thing all the time. Yeah. And you'll know that when you start having those initial conversations. And likewise, what are the red flags for the artist? Do they have a, history of this and this? Where they got to date, and why have they stalled? To this point, or why do they need that next step for management? And are we going to make money together? Because why does everyone not want to talk about money? It's the bit of the business that makes sense for us all, doesn't it? Otherwise, we can't, light our homes and feed our children.
I did say this in the last one, but I always take the approach to management as like dating. So we'll go for little, dates. We'll date for a couple of months, and then we'll see if we solidify it.
You should make an app like for managers and artists, like a Tinder.
Tinder.
Right? You know what I mean?
Great idea.
Good idea.
Not gonna look at that.
What would you call that app?
Great pun in there somewhere. But totally, like every artist we've worked with, there's been at least 3, 4, 5 months before we're taking any money, and it's just chats, and it's like, play some shows, or I'd like to come and see you play. Have them see you play. If they are not into seeing you live, absolutely forget about it. Like, they're not the one for you.
Great. I think we will probably need to wrap up there. Just a sort of reminder that there's lots of things that are freely available, reports around the Dissecting the Digital Dollar work that CMU and Chris does, work around the Deals Guide, which I think is really useful for people to look at, and our Managing Expectations publications are all free. And we're a membership organisation, so if anyone is a manager, please do come and talk to us about how you can get more engaged in what we do.
Actually, there is that resource pool, isn't there? Artists looking for management as well.
Oh, yeah, we also have there is actually a section on the website that is artists seeking management that you can fill out with some info, which goes to our members that are looking for talent and building their rosters. So thank you, Karl, Shikayla and Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wide Days, for having us. And thank you, audience.